Hello friends, Namaste, a very warm welcome to Ansarkari. I'm Vikas Bhardwaj, and as you would have seen in the previous lectures also, that all important elements including understanding for the mains and the concept making which will help you to even write optional answer is being created through this series. Very important point to note is that you must make your own notes. You must discuss with me whenever we are deliberating other aspects, and later on we will continue with the answer writing and also using this understanding in different other subjects also. Industrialization and globalization. It seems to be a generic, and we also believe that we know this well because we have studied newspaper, we have studied NCERT textbooks, and we have followed other sources also. But I can assure you, in spite of going through all those sources, there is a requirement for a structured and a very, very critical approach. And that is what we will try to create. The idea of nation state formation and along with that war comes directly to the picture. Because nation state in the modern times is a very important critical aspect, subject, topic, not only from the public administration perspective, but also from the perspective of political science. So social scientists like Andreas Wimmer and Brian Min, they showed in a 2006 study that from empire to nation state, when we are explaining wars in the modern times, that three types of wars are more prevalent, because when we are speaking about the foundation of nation states, then different processes were at work. First is the war to end a foreign rule. For example, if you take post, in 20th century examples, if you are taking the Algerian War of Independence is one example, and the Kosovo conflict in 1998-99, which is still ongoing. You can just Google it because it is very important from the prelims perspective. They will ask you the locations in the Balkans and also ethnicity of different communities. A very important thing. I would again ask you and request you to make your own notes side by side and also make critical understanding when you are writing down. Merely listening will help, but then may not be very helpful to crack the exam. Civil wars within the new nation states were arising due to struggles over the state's ethno-nationalist character, resulting in secessionist efforts by ethnic minorities. That means within the same geographical zone, there might be different ethnicities together. And one ethnic group may be trying to create a cohesive and a consolidated bloc for itself. For example, 1963 to 67, Somalian minority in Kenya, which was demanding union of their area of residence with neighboring Somalia. Can you make a list of 3 to 4 such topics in the world right now? Whether it is Kurd, whether it is a group in Spain, or whether we are speaking about Eastern Europe. Always there are such developments. Third type is interstate wars, which is declared by the governments, which is seeking to help oppressed co-nationals in the new neighboring nation states. I am a powerful nation. I may try to have a sympathetic attitude towards another group which may be oppressed by another power, and that's how I'll be supporting. So Greco-Turkish War of 1991-92, and by new nation states extending their rule to neighboring territories inhabited by co-nationals. For example, Germans went on to conquest Alsace-Lorraine during Franco-German War of 1871. So these perspectives and ideas are really important because the nation building is ongoing a critical process which even India is also undergoing. Let's see its history. French Revolution 1787 to 1799 is the first nation state, and some even consider the establishment of English Commonwealth in 1649, a very important date, as the earliest instance of nation state creation. But since 18th century, we know it will be a dominant vehicle of geographic and also social, political and other kind of activities, and it will be replacing the earlier existing political systems in many ways, including monarchy. So the principles of legitimacy will be different when we talk about nation state. So the dynastic monarchies, for example, Habsburg and Ethiopian empires, and even theocratic states like Dalai Lama, we speak about Tibet, and the rule of Prince Bishops of Montenegro, and even colonial empires when we speak about India, because British were ruling us, they believed that we are actually spreading a true religion, or we are making people civilized. And similarly is the communist revolutionary governments. They were acting in the name of helping workers and peasants and oppressed classes by transnational measures. That means you are actually crossing your nation and you are spreading that ideology across the world, which we had seen in the times of Cold War. So there can be different kind of states, but then the nation state is, again I'm saying, is involving many modern concepts, and today it is a thriving concept. Within it there may be other different kind of identities available. So the rise of nationalism in Europe, it was stimulated by the French Revolution and the Napoleonic Wars. American political science professor Leon Badet, he has argued that nationalism calls upon people to identify with the interest of their national group and to support the creation of a state, that is the nation state, to support those interests. So what is nationalism? It is an ideological impetus, and in a few decades it will be transforming many parts of the world, starting with Europe. So who will be threatened? Monarchies, you know and the foreign control of the territories will be replaced by self-determination. It will be a key word when you study world history: self-determination, self-determination. Even India during freedom struggle was buoyed, or you can say by inspired by the idea of self-determination. स्वराज मेरा जन्मसिद्ध अधिकार है और मैं इसे लेकर रहूंगा. Some of the countries like Germany and Italy, they were formed by uniting various regional states but having a common national identity. Greece, Serbia, Bulgaria, Poland, they were formed by uprisings against Ottoman or Russian empires. So Ottoman Empire, a very big empire, which was epicenter will be Turkey and spread over large part. Romania is a special case because it will be formed by unification of principalities of Moldova and Wallachia in 1859 and later gaining independence from Ottoman Empire in 1878. So if you again see what is happening in the Eastern Europe, so things have been a little cooler, but then in the last decade of the 20th century and even the first decade of 21st century, if you just go and Google, you talk about Czech and Slovak, Yugoslavia, and the nearby country, then you will find what actually we are discussing. So it is a great ongoing and a very passionate movement to create its own identity and state. Here I am showing you a couple of pictures by which you can have an idea how Persian, Austrian, France, Piedmont, Sardinia, Russia, German states, and so on. So all these things were there, but then things went on to change when we speak about the modern times today. They were at war. They were creating their own identities, and which was leading actually whole world into chaos in many ways. So today's existing problems, they have their roots in those time periods and the understanding of ideas of those times. So major events which had played an important role in the rise of nationalism, for example, European state system, social structure in France, and the idea that modern values, ideas of republicanism, ideas of self-rule, ideas of that man have dignity, all these values and ideas, they will be when coupled with economic policy, which is the mercantilist theory, France will be producing a first kind of a mirror or an identity. So France, apart from England, we can say that it will have a reputation for producing luxury goods such as silk, satin, laces and perfumes today. And it will be creating these things from scratch. So the development of manufacturing and trade, it will be leading to the growth of new social class. Like today also, when you speak about oligarchs in Russia also, they are they are the owners of the biggest football clubs. They are the owners of the biggest brands. So this kind of development is actually coexisting or continuing side by side with nation state. So the middle class, bourgeois class, theory of mercantilism, all these things will be actually coming into picture when we speak about France as a model in the modern times. But then it will be criticized by Adam Smith's theory of free market economy. So free market economy will be another kind of element which is actually going to propagate nation state. We will see how. Ideas of enlightenment like John Locke, Isaac Newton, Voltaire, they question the existing knowledge and spread of new ideas will be linked with openness, investigation, religious tolerance. Look at the key word, religious tolerance throughout Europe and the Americas. So enlightenment will be a major point in the Western civilization in an age when we see that how existing system of church at the center, existing system of feudalism, existing system of dependent upon agriculture, it will be actually changing to modernization through what we say industrialization, as we have discussed in our previous lecture. So many personalities are there. They are going to propose new ideas, new thoughts, which are even prevalent across the world today. So the idea of liberal society, like given by John Locke, who first preached the notion that reason and knowledge are derived from experience. And he also argued in his second treatise on civil government 1690 that man possesses natural and inalienable rights to life, liberty and property. The key word here is inalienable. Under no circumstances these rights can be taken away. These ideas are later found in both US Declaration of Independence and they are found in the French Declaration of Rights of Man. But after the defeat of Napoleon at Waterloo in 1815, various victorious powers, whether it is England, Russia, Austria and Prussia, these powers, they assembled in Vienna in 1815. They are forming an alliance and they are worried that the ideas propagated by Napoleon actually they are leading to ideas of revolution, ideas of self-identification, ideas of self-determination, ideas of self-rule. These countries are not ready for such kind of radical thoughts. That is why Metternich was an able diplomat and he was trying to create a balance of power in the favor of European powers, including Austria at the center. So the post-Vienna Congress Europe is called Metternich system because he was the one who is trying to give idea that how we can be together and how we can stop all these kind of revolutions and all these kind of measures which are actually creating a threat for the conservative system or the monarchical system of the present times. So Habsburg Empire, which is there at the center, it will be facing heat along with other European powers. When we are speaking about England, then England is also a modern state, but it is on a different league and path than that of France. The goal was to contain nationalistic uprisings which can be dreadful and threatful to them. So changes were made in Europe by these powers. They went on to say, okay, Austria will be controlling northern Italy. Russia will be controlling Finland, Lithuania, and a separate kingdom of Poland was created with Russian Tsar as king of that Poland. During this time, Germany, 39 confederation of 39 independent states, Italy, Central Europe, and Russia. Russia is a multinational empire at this time with dozens of major nationalities, including Polish, Ukrainians, and Finns. They were divided into small and middle-sized states. Today, also, if you ask why Poland is threatened, today, if you ask that why certain countries which were initially part of USSR, now they see Russia as a threat. Root causes goes here. Whereas Russia believes that all these are actually rightfully belonging to it historically, legacy wise and culturally. That is why it is also fighting for its space. And if it gets a chance, it says that I'm going to expand myself. That is what is alleged by NATO or by the European powers. So these powers are going to interfere in both Italy and Spain in 1820s and they are putting down nationalist and liberal revolts under all circumstances. So what we can conclude is that in the post-Enlightenment society, political liberalism, economic liberalism, and nationalism, they are at the core. Now, in today's time, if I ask you in 2025 that whether economic liberalism is being propagated as the way it was in the 20th century, no, we can't say, especially the way America is behaving. So that is why every century, every a new what I should say time, it witnesses its own ways. So nationalism is a powerful driving force. The goal was to create a unified state in which citizens identify with both nation and the state, that is political community. So the ideal of the nation state, which was relatively new for the Europe in the world, it before the 16th century, we can say that the process started with political communities which were built upon family dynasties. Now the civic nationalism is a top-down approach in which a unified nation state is forced by monarch. That means if I'm a king, I'll say something and you have to follow it, and that's how the rule is. But the popular nationalism is a bottom-up approach, which is linked to enlightenment. So, can you say India's freedom struggle is a bottom-up approach, or you can say is a kind of a top-down approach? What approach would you say? Please write it and we will discuss. So, this form of nationalism assumes that people, I mean to say the one which is popular in nature, people are sharing common language, culture, and identity, and nations should be in charge of their own political destiny. And that is what happened in France. And Napoleon helped in spreading of these ideas. Mazzini popularized the principle of nationalism during the struggle for unification of Italy. Secret organization Young Italy was formed, and it was committed to creating a unified Italian state, which said neither Pope nor King, only God and the people. They are the one who will rule. But here we must ponder that why British were actually trying to create a divide in India. Now the ideas are coming from here also. They believe that like the way we are one community, one nation, similarly India will also be number of communities, therefore number of nations must be there. And this helped them to divide us. So we have our own notion, we have our own nation states concept, we have our own values. We are not completely Western oriented, or we do not follow completely, we do not subscribe completely to the Western model. July Revolution of 1830, independence of Belgium from Holland, and Poland also revolted against Russia, which was brutally suppressed. So, if I say 19th century, there will be immigrants who will be identifying themselves today by ethnicity, for example, in Central and Eastern Europe, and the concept of ethnicities have the right to govern themselves, that is self-determination. Nation state, as I told you, a territory whose territory corresponds to that of occupied by a particular ethnicity, and that has been transformed into nationality. India is having multiple ethnicities, and but we have a great legacy since for more than 4,000 years. That is why we are a nation in itself, unlike the European powers, which are nation only in the modern times. So ethnicities were transformed into nationalities throughout the Europe in the 19th century. So nationality, as I told you, identify identity with a group of people who share a legal attachment, personal allegiance to a particular country. That is why we say we must also prove our patriotism to our country. We must sacrifice for our country. We must make sure that our country remains at all costs. So a nation nationality is a group of people tied together to a particular place, as I told you, through legal status. Ethnicity, as I told you, shared cultural trait. So we have Northeast having a different ethnicity, South Indians, Dravidians, and then like the way we speak about North Indians, then also a different race. So we have multiple races and ethnicities in India, but we are one because we identify with so many other values which are so much common, even beyond ethnicity. Our roots are much more deeper. So nationality will be sharing cultural traits such as voting, obtaining a passport, as you know. So issues are there because there will be fight by one ethnicity, one ethnic group to have its own space, having its own, identity, and will be trying to create as a nation state. Other power or other group will try to stop it. So that is why Eastern Europe is a mixture of empires and states that did not match ethnicities. And First World War and even the Second World War, all these are linked and results of such kind of developments in the Western world. So Hungarian and Ottoman empires, they were broken, and the boundaries were redrawn according to the principle of nation states, and that was an ongoing process. So disintegration of empires through the emergence of nationality is a very, very important topic and concept, because it is going to help you to understand what actually happened and how the world felt its tectonic shift. So 19th century Ottoman Empire was having Balkan Peninsula, including Greek. Today also you have Greek is divided into two groups. One is aligned to Turkey, another is with the Europe. So the Greeks, Serbs, Bulgars, and even Albanians, they were all part of Ottoman empires. And the inhabitants of Balkans were mostly Christians. Whereas we know the overlord of the power is the Muslim, Turkish. Therefore, there was a mutual animosity towards each other's faith and also ethnicity. So we say, and the UPSC will ask you the Eastern question. It will arise because of the passion and because of the constant, desire of the Balkan people to have their own space. And as the Ottoman Empire will decline, there will be a kind of a solid development taking place, and the powers of Europe, they were looking for resettlement of Turkish territories in the event of a disintegration. At the same time, there will be interest of Russia, because the great powers of Europe, like today, they always felt that the ambitious ambitions of Russia are very much, threat to them. So Europe feared that the ambition of Russia at the expense of Turkey, they are going to harm them. So on one hand, they are watching and they are being part of the disintegration of the Ottoman Empire. On the other hand, they also believe that if it is disintegrating, then Russia may be at, advantage and we will be loser. So Russia had a territorial design with respect to Balkans. Balkans were of the Slav race, shared Orthodox Christianity, and Russia obviously it wanted to control Black Sea and the Straits. So in these circumstances, British Empire is also having their own interests, because British feared that the Russian aggrandizement at the expense of Turkey, it will be weakening British hold upon India. You can remember, and we have read it also, that how British is responsible for what is happening in Afghanistan till today, and what has happened to India, and also in the name of stopping Russia into further down south, that means towards Afghanistan and India. British went on to just help themselves. So British are trying to stand with Turkey against Russian aggression. On the other hand, there is Austrian interest, because Austria is also rival of Russia in the Balkans because it's a landlocked country, and it requires land pass to the Adriatic Sea for seaborne trade, and a great volume of trade is flowing down the Danube River. You just check out the geographical map and you'll find it. That is why they also want to stop and to curb Russian supremacy at the mouth of the Danube at all costs. They also fear, Austrian fear is also that pan-Slavic movements in Balkans will also lead to dissolution of Austrian Empire, which actually happened. So at first, Austria is not taking active parts in the affairs of the East because Metternich, as I told you, he believed in the balance of power doctrine, and it was trying to limit the Russian influence for a while. But expulsion of Russia from Italy and Germany when they got unified, I mean to say Italian unification and German unification separately, Austria will be fumbled to keep Russia in check. And that is why we also know, if you go and read how First World War started, and here lies the root causes. So the German interest at the same time, Bismarck kept himself aloof from the Eastern question, but after the defeating of Austria and France by 1870, at 1878 Congress of Berlin, he posed also a kind of a, you can say, he also was trying to make sure that German interests are protected. He was acting as an honest broker to solve Eastern question, but actually German intention was to keep check on Russia, and at the same time it was being appeasing towards Turkey. She is now going to train her army and secure permission to build Baghdad-Berlin railways, and that is how militarization of Europe is also taking place. But in this whole story, the situation of Turkey, or you can say the epicenter of Ottoman Turks, is actually to be understood because it had passed its prime time. In the medieval ages, it was a great power, but now administration in Turkey is paralyzed by insubordination and corruption. Rise in the power of provincial governors, no centralized power. Many races in the Southeast Europe, which were full of contempt for Turkish Orthodox religious values. So even Ottoman Empire did not try to create a kind of a long cherished values of secular ideals and the peace like the way Mughal were ruling in India. They were also brutal in many ways, but still we resisted. So therefore, with the rise of sub-nationalities and the powerful vessels, there will be changes and the bid will be made for independence. So Christian nationalities under Turkish rule, they were demanding autonomy from Ottoman Turks, and therefore atrocities will be taking place in the Balkan region. Greek Revolution, Crimean conflict 1853 to 56, very important. The Balkan crisis of 1875-78 and the Bosnian crisis of 1908 and the Balkan wars of 1912 and 13 will be the causes which will be the marker for the First World War. But we know Khilafat movement, as we have heard also during the First World War. The dismemberment of Turkey will not be easy because Turkey was still a military power. It was having a geostrategic location between the east and west, commanding influence over trade. That is why today also Turkey is a powerful, you can say, nation, and it supported Pakistan in Operation Sindoor. Major powers like British and Germany also supported Turkey with keeping up its empire. So they were also behaving in the way it will be helping to them. So we can say that the empire, that means non-national states, for example, here is a list, you can just have a look. Similarly, state as the main actor in global politics, sovereign, it is both external and internal, geographical boundaries, all states are equal in non-interference. And when we speak about 1648-1649 Treaty of Westphalia in England, it is actually sowing down the seeds for nationalism for the first time. Even the roots are going back to the 12th and 13th century. So 80 years of Dutch War of Independence against Spanish king. So nation state system is central government, population, geographical border and sovereignty. This is not an exhaustive list. This is just a representative element for your understanding. So the development of Eastern question is very important, as I just said. That is why the root causes are very important even for today's economic system. So the Greek rebellion of 1820s, because the Greek on the coast of Aegean, they enjoyed practical autonomy. because they were having their own control on their lives. By the 18th century, nationalistic sentiment among Greeks arose, calling for the glories of ancient times, and they were inspired by French Revolution, American Revolution, and that is how secret societies will be there by 1814, and they will be expelling Turks from Europe, and they will be trying to revive old Greek Empire of the East. So the Greek War of Independence, even this is being spoken about by Rajaram Mohan Roy in India, and there will be atrocities on the local people, and there will be kind of a confrontation with the Turkish power. So for the first 6 years the great powers did not intervene. They were seeing this as a threat, because if they are going to support Greece, tomorrow it will spread to Austria, then it will be spread into Britain, and so forth. So the doctrine of balance of power among the ruling dynasties of Metternich, they will be actually trying to follow it only. All of them were respecting the integrity of Turkey, but actually they are trying to help themselves. When by 1827 the Sultan, or you can say the Ottoman Empire chief, Khalifa, he is calling upon the vassal Mehmet Ali of Egypt to come to his help against the Greek resistance, because a wave of sympathy is spreading through Europe for the people with such a rich cultural heritage. Loud protests were there and ruthless subjugation of the country, which is the cradle of European civilization. That is what we think about Greece of Aristotle, Greece of Plato, Socrates, and so forth. The great powers feared that Russia under Nicholas Tsar will be taking decision in the favor of Greeks. So they also wanted to stop, in any case, Russia's moral support to Greece. That is why France, Britain and Russia, they will be jointly proposing armistice with Turkey. And the Turkey will be rejecting their offer, and now France and England, they will be actually trying to subjugate, trying to destroy Turkish fleets. And that is why things will be moving on and churning on. So new government will be coming in England. They withdrew their participation from the Greek question, and they allowed Russia a free hand in the Greek question. So always remember, any power which is actually capable of, to a certain extent, then only certain things can change. So today what China is doing, today what Russia is doing, today what Israel is doing, today what is happening in context of Iran, and in between of all these developments, think about North Korea, think about South Korea, and then think about India's rise also. Russia declared war against Turkey and forced her to come to terms by the Treaty of Adrianople 1829, and Turkey recognized the independence of Greece, Wallachia and Moldova. So it was a great triumph for Russia. Russians' rights, Russians' power, Russians' privileges, they will be increasing with trade and economy, and it is the process of beginning of dismembering of Turkey. And on the other hand, she is having a goodwill of Greece in the international forum, Orthodox Christians. Thus, Greek War of Independence, the first example of the victory of nationalism since the Congress of Vienna in 1850. It is a blow to Metternich system, exposing the weakness of Turkish to the great powers of Europe. So Muhammad Ali of Egypt, it is also taking advantage at the same time weakness of Turkey, and also he is threatening to march upon Constantinople. That is why Turkish Sultan will be on appealing to great powers of Europe, but nobody will be coming to help the Turkish power except Russia. So the pouring of Russian troops in Turkey, it will be making England, France and Austria uneasy. Further, Turkey under the Treaty of Inkir-Sklisi 1833, it will be giving concession to Russia with respect to free passage of Russian warships through Dardanelles, making Black Sea a Russian lake. Think about today. Today also the geostrategic complications and geostrategic circumstances are not very different. French wanted to support Mehmet Ali of Egypt, hoping to develop interest in Egypt and Syria. It wanted to reduce the British influence in Mediterranean, whereas Britain wanted to contain the influence of France and Russia. That is why it supported Turkey. At the same time, Russia is not looking forward to the success of Muhammad Ali at Constantinople. That means the Khalifa. So the great powers, they will be all meeting at a convention in London with Austria, Russia, Great Britain, and a treaty will be imposed on the Turkish power in 1814. It was victory for Britain because she was able to stop France. She was able to understand and see Russia's influence, and at the same time a bit a symbolic preservation of unity of Turkey also. Please do remember and understand the positions of the European countries, and you will be able to better appreciate and how they went on to rise. But the final point here is the Crimean War, that is 1850 to 1856. The Crimean War fought between Russian, British, French, and you can say Turkey and Austrian Pediment Sardinia on other side. So the French had the privilege of Roman Catholic Church in Ottoman Empire, whereas Russian had the privilege of Orthodox subject in the Ottoman Empire. So both are actually trying to weigh. Both are trying to have uh, control so that they can become more powerful, they can become more expansionist in nature. Crimean War is very, very important. So, custody over holy place in Jerusalem, again a central question, because the peace was offered by the Convention of London, but when outbreak of quarrel between Latin and Greek monks over the custody of the holy place in Jerusalem. Similarly, you think about what the significance is of Palestine for the Arabs. So during the pre-occupation of France in its revolution, 1848, the Greek monk had encroached upon the rights of the Latin monks. Now Napoleon III is demanding full restoration of the rights of Latin monks. But nobody wants a compromise, neither France nor Greeks. That is why there will be again a kind of a very complicated situation. So the last attempt by the great power to solve the crisis in Vienna. Note, Tsar Nicholas had believed that Turkey was a very sick man of Europe, and that is why he declared intention the partition of the dominion of Turkey before its disintegration. He also suggested that England might have Egypt and Syria. Russia might be allowed to control Constantinople and Black Sea. So today's situation is not one day's result. England having control over Egypt and Russia, that was suggested long back. But British will not be even accepted this policy. They will say that Russia is actually trying to, sideline us. So now Russia will try to curse Turkey over the Principality of Wallachia and Moldova. Russia will be demanding control over Orthodox Christian in the Turkish Empire because they are my people. I would like to have control over them. So the growing influence of Russia made England, France, and Austria to intervene, and they will be putting forward their proposal in Vienna. But Turkey rejected, and it said that I'm not ready to support it, and it will be calling Russia to evacuate the Principality of Wallachia and Moldova, and Russia will be refusing, and that is how Ottoman will be declaring war on Russia. And we know it will be very much helpful to Russia only. So, Crimean War or the annexation of Crimea in today's time is not one day's job. It had been there for a long, long time, and that is why today also we can understand the root causes are in the history. So entry of major powers in Britain, France and Britain, they signed treaty with Turkey and they were also declaring war on Russia. Britain participated in the war because she feared that Russia's victory would harm the interest in Mediterranean to the Suez Canal and the Indian Ocean. Napoleon III wanted to avenge the defeat of France under the Convention of London, and that is why it was rallying the public support for Napoleon III. Sardinia and Piedmont under Prince Cavour, it also joined Allied forces so that in future Britain and France would support its unification. Australia joined because she was also against Russian influence in the Danube Basin, harming the naval trade into the Black Sea. So everybody is having their own vested interests. France and Britain against Russia, Sardinia and Piedmont, they have their own way, Austria, they have their own way. Russian retreat and the signing of Treaty of Paris in 1856 is the result because she went on to lose the protectorate over Moldova and Wallachia. They were made self-governing state under Turkish sovereignty. She also announced her claim to Orthodox Christian subjects through the, Turkish Empire. That means Russia what wanted to achieve was not able to, but then game was not over. So this retreatment is not actually stopping now. It will be coming up to the First World War, and the Black Sea became a natural and neutral venue. So the Turkey's integrity now it is guaranteed by the great powers, but actually it is subordinate to the great powers, like the way today. It was admitted to the concert of Europe, which was an exclusive club of great powers, that Turkey must remain. In return, there will be reforms for Christian subjects under the Ottoman Empire. So we can say that without thinking about the world, without thinking about real prosperity of the whole world, Europe was actually always busy for its own selfish interests. The Berlin Congress in 1878, there will be a narrow compromise, and to settle the issues uh, between great powers, Congress met in Berlin, that is under Bismarck's presidency. Now Germany is actually a little more powerful. Treaty of Berlin will be there. So Austria was allowed to occupy and administer Bosnia-Herzegovina so that Russian influence can be checked upon. England is securing control over Cyprus so that Russian naval powers' unlimited passage and access can be stopped. To appease Russia, Bessarabia and a number of territories in Asia Minor were given to it. Obviously, Russia will not be happy in telling me you are giving me things which are actually less valuable. Montenegro, Serbia, and Romania, they were declared independent of Turkey. But the big Bulgaria was not declared independent and the Sultan remained nominal head of it. So the situation was changing. But then, is Russia happy? Is Turkey happy? So for Turkey, the Treaty of Berlin was an official acknowledgement of its disintegration. Treaty of Paris, it guaranteed the territorial integrity of Ottoman Empire. Now you can say Treaty of Berlin is acknowledging its disintegration, all happening within a couple of decades. So Treaty of Berlin failed to remove the grievances of Balkan nationalities. It sacrificed the interest of Balkan people in order to satisfy great powers like Austria and Great Britain. And obviously, it will be precipitated more when Russia will be shouting along with these people. So, narrow compromise based on selfish principles that completely include the national sentiments of the Balkan people, as we started the chapter with the thinking of what is a nation state. So, Balkans were feeling angry, feeling cheated, feeling passionate. They were not independent, they were under Turkish rule even so much and so long time. So the Bosnia and Herzegovina, they were again under the control of Austria. Serbia, which wanted to desire union with Croatia, and Bosnia and Herzegovina, they all felt angry. This was the bone of contention and one of the first and the indirect causes of the First World War. And forget about the militarization by Britain, by France, and by Germany. So that is why Romania, Bulgaria, Eastern Europe question is very, very important along with the Crimean War to understand the modern geopolitical situations. Greece remained discontented because Macedonia was again handed over to the Ottoman Empire. British Prime Minister claimed that we have bought peace with honor, like the way they will be talking in the Second World War when Hitler will be creating havoc. So for the time being, there was peace. There will be no major war in Europe for the 3 decades after the Treaty of Berlin, but the treaty contained seeds of many future wars, and that is what UPSC asks. As Germany now chose Austria over Russia by hurting the goodwill, because it was showed by the Russia during the Franco-Prussian War in 1870, there will be rivalry between the two. And two rival camps are there. The dual alliance between the Russia and France, and secondly, Bismarck's triple alliance, defensive military alliance between Germany, Austria, Hungary, and Italy. Therefore, the political situation in Europe began to take shape, which will be producing the First World War or the Great War of 1914, First World War, and even we will be paying in the whole 20th century. So the Eastern question will be solved on paper. The Balkan nationalism, which will be churning, it was a churning powder keg, but it will be exploding in 1914. The Balkan relationship with Australia will remain strained, where the Ottoman Turkey was pushed to wall by the great power slowly and surely, and that is what Khilafat movement will also be asking. So you can say that even today also things are better, but not they are solved in a peaceful and a purposeful manner, and that is what you have to understand because all questions will be coming up applied. So Crimean War was a useless war. Crimean was a fumbling war. Out of mud of the Crimea, New Italy was made, and New Germany also. And similarly, the settlement reached at the Berlin ignored the aspirations. Lord Beaconsfield, after his return from the Congress of Berlin, boasted, "I have brought peace with honor." You have to comment. Nominally, the new Turkey was Republican democratic. Again, a comment. The Eastern question was always has been an international question, was not easily solvable because the major power diverged. Sick man of Europe, that is Turkey, showed unusual recuperative powers, and the political heirs had to wait long before they could succeed to the inheritance. So, what we have discussed in this lecture is the understanding of nation state and also the root causes for First World War and understanding geopolitical situation of Europe along with how Russia and Turkey and everyone is placed. So do solve these questions and we will discuss that how we can write in 150 words and thereby link also these understanding for the prelims, mains, and even I would say because history optional questions will be asked to those candidates who are having history optional in the interview also. Thank you very much for being with Ansarkari and we will see you in the next session.